Hey everyone, welcome to the new episode of Dynovox Insights. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know when shopping for an air intake for your vehicle. There are tons of options out there, and it can get a bit overwhelming. Most air intakes are designed to eliminate factory air restrictions, giving you better throttle response, more torque, horsepower, and of course, a meaner sound. But with so many shapes, sizes, and materials, how do you know which one's right for you? I'll break it all down into several simple categories, and don't worry, this info applies to all models, no matter the generation or motor. One quick note before we dive in. Some models don't require a tune when you install an air intake. Adding a tune can really help you get the most out of your upgrade by maximizing the performance boost. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid idea of what to look for when picking out an air intake for your car. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to smash the subscribe button, and let's kick things off with what an air intake really means. Alright, so here's the deal with intakes. They might sound complicated, but once you break it down, they're pretty straightforward. Their job is to bring oxygen, which is a key ingredient in an internal combustion reaction, into the engine's combustion chamber to modulate how much oxygen mixes with burning fuel. For an engine to run, it needs fuel, a spark, and oxygen. Fortunately, the air around us is full of oxygen. The trick is getting that air into the engine to mix with the fuel, then sparking it to create that explosive energy that powers the car. The air intake system is what brings air from outside into the engine. When it's working right, it allows a steady flow of air into the combustion chamber, giving your engine more consistent power and improving fuel efficiency. So in the simplest terms, the intake system pulls air into the intake manifold, mixes it with fuel from your gas tank, and then ignites it. That air-fuel mix explodes in the engine's cylinders, creating the energy that turns your car's wheels through the transmission. Without air intake systems, vehicles would not be able to rely on a continual internal combustion reaction. Any produced motion would be sporadic and unusable. Due to their materials and construction, the airflow of even the high-performance dry air filters will usually be less than an oiled filter of the same size. The upside to dry filters is that they require less maintenance. They aren't always reusable, since using water to clean them will damage the filter element. Their life can be extended by using compressed air to blow some of the dirt off, but that can only be done so many times. OEM dry filters are generally effective up until 10,000 to 15,000 miles. Check your service manual. Then, they must be replaced. Dry filters are commonly used in vehicles that are driven in drier, dustier climates, where airborne contaminants are way more plentiful than in wetter climates. Many people run dry filters in these environments because there is usually so much dust that an oiled filter would need to be cleaned constantly. So, in what situations would an oiled filter perform better, and how do they differ from dry filters? Oiled filters. In most aftermarket intake kits, companies supply their product with an oiled filter. Oiled filters flow more air through their media because they are constructed from a more open cotton material that is coated with a thin layer of oil. Generally, high-performance dry filters can catch up to 99% of the incoming contaminants due to the smaller micron size of the filter media, while oiled filters catch about 98% of what passes through. A minute difference, but a difference nonetheless. The oiled filter material relies on the tackiness of the oil to catch contaminants, while the more open media allows a higher flow rate. The oil acts as a sticky trap for incoming air contaminants, providing an important layer of protection to keep the air free of debris. These filters typically come pre-oiled with a specific amount, so they can drop right in without the user having to do anything. Oiled filters are what you see in most race applications. They aren't always conical as pictured above. Many companies offer a direct drop-in replacement for the stock air filter, and often, there is a slight bump in performance. Another benefit is that these filters can last a lot longer than their dry counterparts. Oiled filters have the advantage of being completely washable and reusable, so you don't have to keep buying filters once they become too dirty. All you must do is follow the instructions to clean the filter and you're all set. However, with greater airflow from these filters comes great responsibility. Oiled filters must be regularly cleaned, maintained, and properly oiled, or else they can become detrimental to performance. You may have also heard that oiled filters can damage your mass airflow sensor. Let's nip this right in the bud. Usually the only way for something like this to happen is if you over-oil your filter when reapplying the oil. If there is too much oil on the filter, some of it can get sucked in through the cotton gauze and damage the MAF sensor. This is where you must be careful and follow the instructions on how to clean your oiled filter. If properly maintained, an oiled filter can look as new as the day you purchased it. This additional maintenance schedule would be a drawback for some, but for us gearheads, it's just another day under the hood. A short ram intake has been one of the most popular modifications for any vehicle for a long time. This form of intake is a simple design and usually consists of replacing your factory intake piping with that of a smooth pipe and topping it off with an open air filter. Due to the simplicity of its design, the install process is a lot easier than that of the cold air intake systems, as well as the cost being much lower. If you look at the picture below, you can see the general idea of a short ram intake setup for a V8 application. While performance and efficiency are important, some people like the design of a short ram intake, simply due to the look, and that the air filter is still present and visible in the engine bay. The idea behind the cold air intake design is to draw in as much cold air as possible, hence the name cold air intake. It achieves this by positioning the open air filter as far away from the heat of the engine as possible. The cold air intake is usually placed in spots such as away from the exhaust manifold, under the fenders, towards the front of the grille, etc. This can vary depending on the design of the engine and fitment possibilities. Due to more material being used, like more piping, the cold air system is usually more expensive and a bit trickier to install. The increase in cost is also due to the amount of research and development that has been put into the design of the kits. Due to factors like there being extended piping and bending usually throughout the tubing, manufacturers of these intakes test and trail them to make sure things like fuel-to-air ratios stay in safety levels and do not hinder the performance or benefits of your vehicle. Another key element to take into account, due to the air filter being further away from the heat of your engine, your vehicle will be less likely to suffer from when the radiator fan flips on. This occurs when the fans in your engine bay turn on to push away or dissipate heat from the radiator. When running a short ram intake, you run the risk of it blowing hot air directly into your intake, therefore hindering performance, as opposed to the cold air intake being out of direct contact with the heat blow by. Okay, so remember science and chemistry in high school. You learned that cold air is denser than hot air. When an explosion is fed with cold air, that explosion will be a lot more intense. A factory intake tends to feed less potent warm air into the cylinders, and this means less energy or horsepower gets extracted from the fuel. A cold air intake, on the other hand, gives the engine more oxygen and cold air to work with, so the explosions become more intense, resulting in the engine efficiently, thus making more horsepower, with the same amount of fuel still being used. With everything said, both are great in their own right with both pros and cons. Cold air intake units typically allow more room for performance gain, but they cost more and are harder to install. Short ram intakes are more affordable and easier to install, but are known to be less performance-related and more for looks with louder sounds. Keep in mind, whichever you may choose, they should be orientated around the direction you are taking with your build. Also remember, a good flowing intake system can benefit from other future modifications. A common misconception is that installing a CAI will significantly increase the top speed of a vehicle. While it may improve horsepower and acceleration, top speed is influenced by many other factors, including aerodynamics and engine management systems. Another myth is the belief that any CAI can fit into any car. In reality, CAIs are specifically designed to suit different models and makes, and a mismatch can lead to suboptimal performance or even damage. Some drivers think that a CAI will universally improve engine performance regardless of the vehicle. However, the actual performance gain varies greatly depending on the car's original setup and the quality of the CAI. There is a notion that once a CAI is installed, no further tuning is necessary. While some systems are designed to work with stock settings, maximum efficiency and performance gains are often achieved with additional tuning. While it's true that CAI can change the sound of the engine, louder doesn't always mean better in terms of performance. Some CAIs may sound more aggressive without yielding significant performance improvements. Hopefully, you now have all the knowledge you need to go out and buy your next air intake. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode of Dynovox Insights, give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll see you again very soon.